All right, hold on here. I'm trying to find these emails. Give me a second. We got a big budget here on this program. Okay, there we go. I got them now.
You never have these emails in front of you on the screen in your actual email. You print them out so you have them ready.
Well, I print them out so I can have them in my hand and read them and keep track of them. They're not real on the screen. I would have to actually find that specific email. And if I don't have it on paper where I keep it in my stack of daily things to address, then I would forget about it. So I got it right here. Anyway, there were a few of these, and they somehow came in a group, and I thought we would talk a little bit about it because they're all centering on Mama Cornette. I'll read an example. Michael wrote, "You were so brilliant with promos about Mama in the 80s that there were times I thought she would appear on the show. In the years you talked about Mama, did any of the promotions you worked for want to give you an on-screen Mama? And if they did, would she have been a babyface to your heel?" And there was another one that said, did any of the promoters you worked for in the early days want to give you a Mama? I could see Dusty Rhodes calling Mama as a last resort to get your character to behave himself, or what my character, or would she have been a heel? And somebody else had tweeted, did they ever suggest or try to have a Mama Cornette anywhere that we worked, right? So Mama Cornette is the most famous wrestling personality that actually did exist in real life, yet never, ever made one single appearance. Think about that. There have been fictitious people that have been referred to. Blackjack Mulligan used to populate his interviews with all the citizens from Eagle Pass, Texas, or, Killer Carl Cox had Alex, his imaginary friend, or whatever the fuck. But Mama Cornette was the only person who's an actual legitimate person that existed in the world and was referred to on all those programs that we just talked about, she was talked about on programs that were heard and seen by millions of people every week. Never made one appearance, never did one interview, was never seen one time, never even a picture was revealed of her specifically saying this is Mama Cornette. That's got to be some kind of record, right?
I think so.
You have to.
I can't think of any other examples. I mean, was President Shinma ever on WWF TV? I don't know.
Well, but his picture was in the fucking program.
That's true.
Yeah, there you go. No, and see, the whole thing started and we're not going to go through. I was born of a small black child in a log cabin, right? We're not going to, but just to briefly, the only reason that it came up was Jerry Jarrett wanted to make me a manager. And because I had been seen in every town in his territory since I was 14 years old as the ringside photographer, what is a plausible, somewhat realistic explanation that we can give for the ringside photographer suddenly becoming a wrestling manager? Well, and everyone had seen, because since I didn't have a driver's license when I was 14, my mom driving me to the matches. And then later on, as she began working for Christine Jarrett herself, doing the merchandise tables in not only Louisville, but Lexington and Evansville. And then while I was ring announcing the spot show, she was handling the gimmick table all by herself in those towns. So we were traveling together, so they knew I had a mother. And Gary Hart, the Playboy, had done the old, rich Chicago family gimmick years ago. So Jerry Jarrett sat me down and said, we're going to give you the Gary Hart gimmick. People didn't know whether my mom was rich or not, right? So it was a way to explain to the people and be logical enough and credible enough for the standards of the time that it could explain how somehow I've bought my way in, and the only people that want to take this sucker rich kid for a ride are naturally the heels. Well, that was a way to explain how I showed up, and also a way to get heat on me. And we played that up big in Memphis, obviously. But from the time that I started as a manager, nobody ever saw Mama Cornette again. And I've told this story in the places that didn't know her, like in Memphis and Jonesboro and down at the other end of the territory that she never went. She was a heel, because they just heard about this, this rich, obnoxious woman that had this fucking loudmouthed, obnoxious kid. But in the towns that people knew her and were used to her and had known her for years, she was a babyface and I was a heel, and then people would say, your mother'd be ashamed of you if she would see you right now. No wonder she doesn't come around here anymore. And I almost had more heat because they loved my mom so much that they couldn't imagine that I'd turned out to be such a fucking prick. And no wonder she was ashamed to show up anymore and see what a fucking asshole her son was. So it worked there too. But while she had appeared at many wrestling events, she never actually appeared as part of the show. When I started, that's when she faded into the ether. And Jerry Jarrett obviously knew, my mom had many talents, but being a television performer was not among them. And he was smart enough to know also that the Mama Cornette that we had built in people's minds was better than real Mama Cornette could have ever been as far as being a wrestling heel. She wasn't an obnoxious looking person, or she didn't look like, goddamn, Margaret Dumont in the Marx Brothers movies, this high society, haughty fucking fat woman. And she wasn't going to be cutting any promos. It was just the idea of her that helped me get heat. And he would never have dreamed of, and of course there was no way to have a fake Mama Cornette and have somebody play her because so many people in the territory knew what she looked like because they'd seen her. So it was never talked about in the Tennessee territory. Then we go to Mid-South. Watts loved the gimmick because that's why he picked me. He got so much heat. And it was different than, Skandor Akbar and all the stuff that the managers in his territory had done before. But once again, he never even asked me, can your mom cut a promo? It would have been ridiculous, right? And he was too much of a stickler for credibility to have ever hired anyone to play her, because then also, even though the TVs weren't national in those days, I'm sure there would have been an issue because fucking Little Rock TV for Watts crossed over into Memphis TV for Jarrett, and Jarrett would have been mad. Hey, you assholes are exposing my business up here. They know that's really not Cornette's mother. But it would have been cartoon for Mid-South. The heat was me talking about my rich mother that was never seen, but that had always bailed me out of every jam and bought my way into anything that I wanted to be involved in. And Watts was a master he got heat on the tennis racket to the point where the people popped when he announced on television that the racket had been banned from ringside. He got heat on my mother, even though they'd never seen her or heard her speak, just because of the concept of her. He knew how to get a heat on me as being the most ineffectual, or effeminate, or fucking, wimpy, pussified, coward. He knew how to magnify every negative quality that any heel might possess or could play the part of possessing on television, just like he knew how to maximize every positive attribute of a babyface and minimize everybody's weaknesses. So Mama Cornette was stronger than ever in Mid-South, but once again, it wasn't right to actually see her. That would have taken the credibility that it had and made it gaga. But as you know, where Watts was a master, then we go to Dallas. And when we got there, it was like, okay, that's your gimmick. Go out and talk about your mother, right? Ken Mantell was the biggest placeholder booker I've ever seen in my life. We go from Bill Dundee, that one of the best finish men in the business in the 80s. He could give you incredible finishes. Bill Watts then, giving us those Eddie Graham TV angles where everybody has to be in the right place at the right time, and each individual step in the finish has a spotlight, and everybody's got to be right on point. And these multi-phase angles and things. And we go from that to the exact opposite, where in Dallas, Ken Mantell was the babysitter for the Von Erich boys. The top heels that were working with the Von Erichs at that time, Gino Hernandez, Chris Adams, and one-man gang through Gary Hart. Gang was cool and just did his job and didn't pitch everything. But the top guys that worked with the Von Erichs pitched shit to Ken Mantell, and a lot of it through Gary Hart. And Ken just wrote it down because he was the most uncreative booker. His finishes made no sense. I couldn't get his angles. We couldn't figure it out. And we've talked about, we go in there with Fantastics and we have a match where the tag team title is held up between the two teams the first week of March or whatever. And it's still held up in Texas Stadium 2 months later. We didn't even know why. The whole goddamn run was confusing. But at that point, no, they literally all those personality profiles where, Sunshine and Jimmy Garvin washing the fucking horse at Kevin Von Erichs and all that stuff. The boys came up with that, and they had the ability to get the cameras to come and shoot it because 39 loved the program, and the production company was doing the syndication, and so they, none of that shit was Ken Mantell. And Gary Hart kicked off the Freebirds and Von Erichs angle and feud, and then Ken Mantell came in and capitalized on it.
It was David Von Erich's ranch, not Kevin's.
The point is, Von Erich's ranch, washing the horse, whatever the fuck, the guys would come up with that stuff and pitch it, and they'd go out and shoot it. But we were not at a point there. We weren't in the clique, and we weren't pitching shit because we were trying to just have a angle with the Fantastics and hopefully get to the Von Erichs. But during that time, point is relates to this question, they didn't know anything about Mama Cornette. I just said I did my interviews. And as a matter of fact, we would get finishes of like, well, just catch him with a small package. And we'd dress that shit up. And the promos, they'd say, just talk about your matches coming up. And I would do all the material. The only time that they ever even told me what to talk about on those shows was when I had to explain some of that weird booking, like the goddamn, Little John in our corner at Texas Stadium for the 2-ring, 4 guys in the ring at the same time, 2-referee fucking no DQ match. Okay, I'll get that out. Otherwise, we made up all shit. So Mama didn't appear there. But here we're building to this. We come to work for Crockett and Dusty was excited. And Dusty loved the fucking gimmick too. And Dusty said, talk about Mama all you want. And that's why there was always Mama Cornette this and Mama Cornette that. Dusty loved it. And I remember finally in early 86, we had just got Big Bubba Rogers kicked off, my bodyguard from Louisville that Mama sent down to protect me from these evil wrestlers. And we're in the office one day at Crockett's office on Briar Bend. And it's a Wednesday because we're doing interviews, but Dusty's in his corner office, right? And as I'm walking around the hall on the way to the bathroom from where we did promos, Dusty says, come here, baby. Come here, baby. And Bubba was already in there. He's talking to Bubba about some shit. And he says, you know what we're going to do? We're going to drive the Nemo truck to Louisville, baby. The Nemo truck was the TV truck that Crockett had actually bought in the early 80s. That's where they started doing the TV tapings from the local high school and college gyms and in rec centers and et cetera, and making it bigger than a studio. National Electronics Mobile Operation, Nemo. We're going to drive the Nemo truck to Louisville, baby. Big Bubba Rogers going to be standing there, going to be on the veranda with Mama Cornette. Big Bubba going to be pouring the lemonade pitcher, and Mama Cornette going to be there telling her, Jimmy, I just hope you don't get hurt. Just don't let them hurt you, Big Bubba. Big Bubba going to take care of it. And I'm thinking to myself, this was when Dusty started. It was right before the first, Great American Bash tour in 86, all the stadiums, and Dusty started thinking about doing major motion pictures and sitcoms, and I'm thinking, I know he means this now, and he's having a great time telling Bubba about all these ideas. But my mama ain't got a veranda at the house for real, and where are they going? And then he just assumed that Mama Cornette went, and he said, and Mama Cornette, she'd be sitting there with all the jewels on and everything. My mom did not have any ostentatious jewelry. I'm sure we could have found some, but it was just, that was the pitch that he made. They're going to drive the Nemo truck to Louisville and have Big Bubba on the veranda with Mama Cornette. She's worried about me. Big Bubba going to be pouring the lemonade.
Would she have done it? Would she have done it?
Well, no, because I wouldn't have asked her to do it, because I would have said, no, my mother does not. Once again, it was Dusty having these great ideas, and a lot of Dusty's ideas were great. And some of them were have the Great American Bash at the Liberty Bowl on the 4th of July in Memphis. But it wasn't going to come about because remember, we were going to make major motion pictures and sitcoms, and the major motion pictures didn't come up. As a sitcom, Learning the Ropes, I don't know if that was situation comedy or a comedy that was in a bad situation. But anyway, no, she would have done it if I asked her to do it, but I wouldn't have wanted her to do it. And if we sat down and actually talked about it, then Dusty would have realized also, it makes more sense if Mama Cornette is never seen and only thought, because it can't be as good. At that point, it could never be as good in any real life, no matter who was doing it, Meryl Streep, as what the people had built up in their mind. And everybody always thought she was like a matronly, gray-haired, plump old woman. And the heaviest my mom ever got in her life was 132 pounds. She got her genes, and I got some of the other side of the family's genes. But anyway, and then
I can't see Bubba pouring the lemonade.
And Big Bubba pouring the lemonade, and she went on the jewelry, baby. And then in Smoky Mountain, we just we went with what had been going on, where she was seen and not heard. And every once in a while that led to things like the Rock and Roll Express spoiled my debut of my unveiling of the portrait of her by fucking sneaking under it and replacing it with a dog with its hair in curlers that I then unveiled and went ape shit over. And nobody knew what Mama Cornette looked like. So it was better that way. And then after Smoky Mountain, Vince had never seen or heard of Mama Cornette. And besides that, I'm 35 years old at that point almost, so the mama's boy thing was somewhat downplayed in the WWF.
You could have gone the other way and said, I have inherited a large sum of money. Did anyone ever come up to her in town? Did anyone ever say anything to her, either if they knew her or if they just recognized the name? Like, are you related to Jim Cornette?
Well, nobody ever said anything bad to her. Every once in a while, somebody would recognize the name and she'd tell me about it. Oh, I was at the bank and said, oh, well, my son watches that on television, but never any bad interactions. And every once in a while, when she would go down in years later, when she'd go down to the gardens and just visit Teenie and not, they might see her, sitting back in the section for that the boys would sit in, not in the public area or whatever, and a bunch of people would wave. And when I brought her down to The Last Dance or some of the OVW shows at the gardens, people would remember, and they'd come up and just love seeing her again and catching up and everything. She never had any heat except from the people that never met her.
How often did she watch you on TV?
More often than she admitted, I think, because after she passed away, we're cleaning out at the house. I found it because I'd given her a bunch of VCRs, right, over the years, betas and VHSs. Every time I'd upgrade, I'd send her something or whatever. And she was taping the shows. She taped the wrestling programs that I was on and football. And that's pretty much what she would watch. So more than I would have thought. I think she was keeping an eye on me.
Did Mama Cornette watch a lot of football?
Oh, she was the biggest football fan in the world. She'd go ape shit over football. Every Sunday, she's down there in front of the TV watching football. And then Monday nights when that became a thing. Loved football. I never got football at all. She loved football.
Wow. I did not expect that. I have to be honest. You're lucky you got Big Bubba, not Otis Sistrunk.
And as a matter of fact, she's the one that got me started watching roller derby too, because she loved roller derby and wrestling when she first moved to Louisville and got a television. They didn't have indoor plumbing until she was 18 and moved to Louisville.
So you've never really talked about the idea that she loved wrestling. Who did she enjoy? Who was her favorite?
Well, but see, that's the thing. She loved television. Like I said, she graduated high school in 1951. She's 18. She moves to Louisville, gets a job at the Chamber of Commerce, right, as a secretary. That's the first time she'd had television. They had electricity. I don't think they had TV, and where they lived at that point in time, I don't think they were near enough to a TV signal. So she got a chance to watch all the classic early 50s television programming, right? When TV is a new thing. And she watched roller derby because she liked to roller skate when she was a kid. And she watched wrestling because everybody watched wrestling that had a television. And that's how she never really mentioned anybody specific other than the concept that she watched wrestling. Because it's like that's, one of the three sports that was on TV at the time. But that's the way she sold it to me that made it sound interesting to me when she was up late that night with a cold and had been switching around when you had to change the channel yourself. And she goes from Channel 3 in Louisville when it went off the air at night. she's trying to go to Channel 11 and she passes 4, and there's the wrestling show, Bruiser Show from Indianapolis, coming through snowy. When 3 was off the air, you could get 4 even without my fucking later antenna apparatus I set up. So she tells me the next day, well, you know, Jimmy, I saw a wrestling show last night that looked just like the ones I used to watch when I first moved to Louisville, which it was 20 years since then, right? But that's what Bruiser's show looked like. A fucking one camera in a dark arena with Dick the Bruiser. It could have been 1952, right?
Well, what would she have been watching in 52? Would it have been Kohler's TV, or was it something else in Louisville? So
Chicago wrestling.
So she would have seen the Bruiser if she was watching a few years later.
Yes, and fucking Wilbur Snyder and fucking it's all the same people, right? So I said, well, that sounds, I'd never had heard of the concept of professional wrestling, but just because it was something that looked like something she used to watch a long time ago. I mean, I already liked old radio and old comic books. I watched the old wrestling. And then I saw Bruiser and Bobby Heenan, and there you go. And then I found out it was on in Louisville. She didn't know there was wrestling on in Louisville. Jared had just opened the town back up, a year or two before that. So anyway, that's Mama Cornette. If it hadn't been for her, I wouldn't have watched the shit to begin with. And then later on, she becomes the most famous unseen wrestling personality of all time.
When you did the big promo turning babyface, well, even though you kind of were already babyface after Paulie attacked you, that was also the promo where you, for the first time ever, said, you know, I told Mama, I'll take care of this myself, stay out of it. Did you always, when you thought about the idea of doing a babyface promo, was that the intention that I have to address the idea that I've been this mama's boy on TV for years, I have to say something?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the whole idea, is to complete the metamorphosis, to put me in the sympathetic position after I'd been busted open, laid out, bleeding. The team had lost the World Tag Team title. Bobby was selling an injury. All hope was lost. The last thing was, God damn it, I got to tell Mama I'm going to do something on my own for once. I've got to bow up to Mama Cornette. And that fucking brought it together. So I just threw that in the fucking interview.
And that got a pop when you said it in the studio.
Yeah. I almost went into dustiness where I said, and Mama Cornette said, please come home, baby. Please come home, Daddy. I was going back to the fucking promo. Right? Don't let they put you down with a steel-toed boot. You got to go to the hospital, baby. Got to go to the hospital, baby. I would not give him the damn satisfaction. Instead, I said, my mom said, come home. I'll let the lawyers work it out. We'll let, you don't want to be hurt anymore. I said, Mama, you're going to have to get over it because it's about damn time I do something on my own. And people pop. Because that was the last thing that I had to do to establish that now it's okay to cheer for me, because I've finally bowed up and told my overbearing mother off, and I'm going to fucking fight somebody on my own. And then that shifted the title of world's biggest pussy manager to fucking Paulie, because now he's going to be scared of me and I'm going to be on the offensive. That's psychologically, that's where everybody needs to be in the fan's mind.
Plus Paulie went the other way. You would call your mama. He would say, I'm going to call my dad. I'll sue you. I'll call my dad.
Oh my God. The rich Jewish lawyer from Scarsdale, where the polo ponies roam free.